What if things went differently in The Amazing Spider-Man? What if Captain Stacy never died at the hands of the lizard? Spider-Man swung towards Oscorp Tower for his final confrontation against the Lizard, aka Dr. Kurt Connors. The Lizard tried his best to stop the webhead, but Spider-Man was persistent. Captain George Stacy arrived and stepped out of his police car when he was met with his daughter, Gwen, who tried telling her father who Spider-Man really was. But the captain reassured Gwen that he already knew, to which Gwen begged her father to save Peter. The lizard placed the glowing green serum into the small hatch of the contraption that would turn the whole city into giant mutant lizard creatures. Suddenly, Connors was knocked back from the tip of the tower and landed onto the rooftop surface. The fight between Spider-Man and the lizard was relentless, and Peter was thrown around, flung from the building, only to web himself back onto the roof and slammed to the rooftop surface. Peter climbed the radar tower, and Connors kept throwing nitrogen canisters, to which Peter managed to avoid. Spider-Man swung to the ground and landed on his back. He tried to avoid Connors, but the lizard eventually caught him. His tail coiled around Peter's neck, and Spider-Man was lifted from the ground. The lizard crushed Spider-Man's web shooters, then peeled the hero's mask off to reveal the scarred and battered face of Peter Parker. "Poor Peter Parker," growled the lizard. "No mother, no father, no uncle. You're all alone." Suddenly, there was a loud clicking sound and a familiar voice shouted, "He's not alone!" It was Captain George Stacy. The lizard roared and Captain Stacy shot the nitrogen canister, causing freezing cold gas to spew out. Spider-Man grabbed the tube and sprayed the nitrogen all over the lizard, causing Connors to be consumed in ice. Captain Stacy rushed over to Spider-Man and handed him the lizard gas antidote. He told Peter to let him handle Connors while he go and stop the contraption. Peter didn't want to leave Stacy, but the captain was insistent and took the nitrogen tube from Peter's hand. Peter nodded in understanding before leaping into the air and then swung towards the tip of the tower where the gas container was. Peter landed on the side of the machine and hurriedly took out the green serum from the hatch, then replaced it with the glowing blue antidote. Meanwhile, Captain Stacy tried warding off the lizard, who'd grabbed the tube of nitrogen and threw it aside. The captain tried shooting Connors, but the gun was knocked away from his hand. Stacy backed away and the lizard raised its clawed hand ready to strike. But before it could pierce Stacy's skin, Peter jumped in between the two and felt the sharp claws embed themselves into his torso. The lizard suddenly recoiled and Peter collapsed to the ground. Captain Stacy screamed, "Peter, no!" And all of a sudden, the hatch from the lizard's gas container launched into the sky, and a cloud of blue smoke emerged, and the lizard could do nothing but stare in stunned, horrified silence. Captain Stacy watched as Peter collapsed to the ground. Suddenly, the lizard staggered and fell to his knees. All at once, the monster faded, and the form of Dr. Connors manifested into existence. Connors trembled as he stared at his bloody hand. then murmured a remorseful, "What have I done?" Captain Stacy pulled out his walkie-talkie and spoke into the receiver frantically. "This is Captain Stacy, requesting a Code 8. Requesting urgent backup, immediately!" he barked firmly. "The lizard has been detained. We have a man down!" Then Stacy's attention was drawn to the boy who'd saved his life and was now bleeding out. The captain crouched to Peter's level and put a hand to his mouth in horror. "Stay with me, Peter," he ordered firmly. "Help is on the way. Just try to stay conscious." Peter coughed and smiled up at the police captain. "That's gonna be hard to do, considering I've got a large gas in my stomach," he remarked, trying to lighten the mood. "I've been wrong about you, Peter," admitted Captain Stacy, a lump forming in his throat. "You saved the whole city. Just don't die on me. Gwen needs you." "No, she doesn't," replied Peter weakly. "You're the hero she needs." Suddenly, Peter chuckled, his laughter mixing with painful cough. His eyes seemed to glisten in the moonlight. "I get it," he exclaimed tearfully. "I couldn't save him. Uncle Ben, I couldn't save him. But I saved you." Peter started to wheeze and cough painfully, both of which were mixed with the painful laugh and tears trickled down his face. All of a sudden, the life seemed to leave Peter's eyes, as his breathing faded, and his form became lifelessly still. The silence was as still as ever, then was broken by Captain Stacy's cry of agony. Suddenly, armed police officers arrived on the rooftop and gasped at the sight. Captain Stacy had slipped Peter's mask on out of respect, despite the inevitability of everyone finding out who he was. Gwen waited outside the Oscorp Tower tensely, praying for Peter's victory. Suddenly, she spotted her father's police troop exiting the large double-door entrance. Gwen started to panic when she witnessed the glum expressions on their faces. "Hey, where's my dad?" she demanded fearfully. "Where are Spider-Man and the Lizard?" Suddenly, Gwen spotted Dr. Kurt Connors in handcuffs and escorted by two police officers. Gwen was pale when she spotted the spurts and stains of blood on Connor's hands. Then out came Captain Stacy, carrying the body of Spider-Man in his arms. Gwen let out a scream of agony and clasped her hands over her mouth as she started sobbing hysterically. The police captain gloomily placed Peter's body upon the roof of a police car and solemnly approached his daughter. "You said you'd keep him safe!" Gwen cried furiously. "You said you'd save him!" Captain Stacy said nothing, but bowed his head with a lump in his throat. Gwen broke down and Captain Stacy pulled her closer in a comforting, protective embrace. The funeral of Spider-Man was a city-wide event. The identity of Spider-Man was inevitably revealed through the Daily Bugle to be Midtown High student Peter Parker. Aunt May was distraught by the news and blamed herself for not finding out sooner. At the funeral, Captain Stacy revealed how he was wrong about Spider-Man, and that he truly was the real hero who saved New York City from the hand of the Lizard. Gwen hadn't spoken to her father in quite some time, and partially blamed him for failing to save Peter. Captain Stacy already blamed himself immensely, but nobody had felt more guilty or remorseful than Dr. Connors. He sat alone in his cell at the Rikers Island prison and reflected on his decisions. He glanced down at his hands in shame, and suddenly he heard a voice from the shadows say, "Ah, so you're the one who took down the webhead." Dr. Connors sneered and hid his face away. "Leave me alone," he groaned. "I already feel bad enough." The mystery man chuckled to himself and continued to speak. "I'm not here to condemn you. In fact, me and a few other guys I know could use someone like you." "What could you possibly want from me?" Connor demanded. The man pulled out a file and showed it to Connor. It read, "Project 6. Oscorp Lab still holds those radioactive spiders," he replied. "Peter Parker won't be the only one to hero up." "Why not destroy the spiders?" demanded the imprisoned doctor. The mysterious man smiled and tucked the folder into his coat. "Where's the fun in that?" he replied smugly. The mystery man then turned away and started to slowly pace down the corridor before calling out, "Think about it, Doctor!" Meanwhile, at Oscorp Tower, Gwen wandered solemnly down the dimly lit corridor and stopped halfway at a pair of double doors. She knew this was the same place where Peter had got bitten, but Gwen punched in the code to open the door and enter the dark space. She was morbidly curious of whether or not the staff had disposed of the wretched things that took away her boyfriend, but surprisingly, they hadn't been touched. Oscorp seemed to be covering up the way Peter had died, but was still keeping the radioactive arachnids. Suddenly, Gwen felt a sharp prick on the back of her hand. She instinctively flinched as her hand flipped upwards, and Gwen stared as a bright red bite mark near her thumb emerged. Suddenly, Gwen spotted a tiny spider scuttling away from the laboratory.